So welcome to Southeast Land Trust Natural Series, Winter Twigs and Sticks. I'm here today with Roanne Robbins. Roanne is a master naturalist, nature educator, and garden designer. Thank you, Roanne, for being here today. If you haven't heard of Southeast Land Trust before, SELT is a nonprofit that conserves land in Southeast New Hampshire for wildlife, drinking, water, farm and fresh food, outdoor recreation, and healthy forests. So Roanne, you'd like to take it away?
Good morning. It's nice to see all these faces. And I usually like to start any class that I teach with a poem, and I attach the poem in our little handout, but I feel like yesterday was so true spring. Even a poem that says winter branches just feels inappropriate, but we'll give it a go, and we'll start with that. Winter branches. When wintertime grows weary, I lift my eyes on high and see the black trees standing, stretched to get clear against the sky. They stand there silent with the cold, flush sky behind. The little twigs flare beautiful and restful and kind, clear cut and certain they rise with summer past. For all that trees can learn, they know at last, slim and black and wonderful, with all unrest gone by. The stripped tree boughs comfort me, draw clear against the sky. So as a gardener and naturalist, I have a really dirty secret that I prefer plants without their leaves, which I really like the structure and I like the grid-like, their grid-like element that it casts onto the landscape. So I like identifying plants and trees by their branches or twigs or buds, but there are so many other ways to identify a tree. So let's go over that. Does anyone have, when they're out looking at trees or shrubs or any plant vegetation, what do you usually go to? And I see that Molly has, who's here on Molly's screen? Can you introduce yourself just so?
Liam.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. I heard Liam. So Liam, who's Liam? Can you raise your hand so I can? Hi, Liam, good morning. And who's the next person next to you? And what's your name, please? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Emmett.
Emmett. Great.
Roman.
Hi, Rowan. Okay, great. So does anyone have a suggestion of when you're out in nature, what clues a tree can give you to identifying it? Does anyone have anything they like to look at?
Leaves.
Leaves, yes. So leaves are usually our go-to figure out what the tree is. What else? What's another clue that a tree can give us besides leaves?
How about bark?
Bark, that's another great one. Anyone have another one that they could share?
Yes.
What? I couldn't hear you, Rowan. I'm sorry.
Sticks.
Sticks? Is that what you said? Yep. And the other thing is the habit, like how the shape of the tree, how it's growing, and where it decides where it is growing, the location, the habitat of the tree. So now let's just do a quick activity so we get oriented with what a twig is. So why doesn't everyone grab a sample from their pile, and we're going to do a 2-minute drawing. Grab a piece of paper, pen, or pencil, and we're going to draw one of the twigs in front of us. Deb, I am going to put a twig, I'm going to share my screen and put a twig on the screen for you. I hope that's not putting you on the spot to not have the liberty of selecting the tree, the branch you use.
Actually, Roanne, I went out in my yard and cut a bunch of twigs. So
oh, perfect.
I have some, so you don't have to do that for me. Thank
you.
All
right, great. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to grab a twig and do this activity myself with you. All right, I'm going to start the timer now. Okay, we have about 35 more seconds. All right, 5 more seconds. All right, everyone, let's stop. Okay. I don't want to put everyone on the spot, but I'd like to ask you 3 things. What number sample you decided to draw? What is something that you observed that you concentrated on your drawing, and then give you the opportunity to share it up at the screen for us. Okay. Would anyone like to volunteer to start?
Okay. Sample.
Okay. Okay, so which number is that, please? So everyone can hear. Oh, sample 1. Okay. And what, in drawing this twig, what was the main feature of the twig that you concentrated on in your drawing? What was something that you observed while doing this drawing?
Probably the branches.
The branches, like the structure of how it was shaped. That's great. So let's write that down. I'm going to write the branch structure. Okay, who wishes to share next? Rowan.
I chose sample number 10.
Okay. And what is an observation you would like to share?
That the bark has fuzzy kind of texture.
Yeah, it totally does. That's a great observation. All right, who would like to share theirs next?
I did sample 1.
Sample 1. And oh, I like the detail that you picked up. What is something that you observed in your drawing?
It's bumpy, but kind of smooth.
Yeah. Would anyone else like to share an observation in their drawing? Cassandra, do you want to share? I don't want to put anyone on the spot.
I chose number 10.
Mm-hmm.
I can hold it up there in case.
Yeah.
And it's fuzzy. Has some little buds on there. Some red.
Color. I'm hearing a lot about texture and all these sensorial observations. Deb, I think we lost.
She said that
Deb.
she would be right back.
That's fine. So I'm going to share, I drew sample number 7, and I observed that there were a lot of marks on our twig. There's a lot going on, not just, if I was going to say wood or the branch structure. There's other things appearing on this twig. And if I touch them, because everyone was really making these beautiful sensorial observations, I can feel that there is bumps and texture to these twigs. So let's kind of dive in with some of the observations that you made and talk about a twig. And I think a twig that's easy to talk about is sample number 7. So if everyone can find number 7. I think it's an easy one to talk to. I feel like we should be in a Harry Potter class. And here's our little one. Okay, so let's go over the terms of how we need to know the parts of this twig, so then we can figure out how to identify what it is and find out what characteristics we should be looking for when we're out in the field. So when you look at the tip of this branch, or this twig, what do you see? Does anyone want to share an observation? What do you see at the tip of this twig? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
There are small bud-like feature bumps.
Yeah. Do you think, is there one that's bigger than the other?
On ours, I think it's the ones on the sides.
Yeah. So on this particular, if you look at the drawing in your packet on page 1, that can kind of give you some extra help with this. There's the auxiliary bud, okay, and the terminal bud, the bud that's at the end, and the other buds that's accompanying that. And if you look at it flat, you could, with the top of your bud here, okay, you can observe on the side of those buds that there's something that looks similar to kind of like a horseshoe or a shield underneath those little buds, which are the auxiliary buds. So do you see that on your twig on sample 7, that there's these large kind of horseshoe-ish kind of shape? Everyone see that? That is a scar. What do you think it's a scar from? You know, when you bump your leg and your skin comes off and it forms a scar. This is a scar as well. So what do you think was attached to this? How do you think the scar was made? What do you think? Can I have a guess? Especially look at the actual twig.
The leaf falling off, and then it covering that over so it doesn't lose any sap or bugs can't get into it.
Yep. So the leaf was attached there, and that new bud could be a new growth, right? Buds can be a few different things. When we look at that scar, do you notice anything inside it? Anyone notice anything? Anyone want to share? Well,
Notice that there's sticky stuff.
Yep, there can be sticky stuff definitely coming out of your twig.
Well, there's kind of like, I don't know.
No, that's a great observation.
There are rings.
Are you talking at the bottom of the sumac that you're holding, or are we talking about the shape?
Oh, the shape.
Let's wait. Let's hold on. When we get to the bottom of the twig, Emmett is going to be our first person to talk because he's having experience with the stickiness, and I want to hear more about that. Because Rowan, you were talking about where the leaf has fallen off and that scar that's there. And what do we see in that scar? Does anyone want to add to that? What they're observing in in that scar? Because I see something on mine in that little scar. And especially if you have a magnifying glass or a loop and can really look close at that scar, you'll see something. Can anyone see with the sample they have what's there? I'm observing little dots that are in a formation. It kind of looks like a horseshoe a little bit. Is anyone observing that? It might look a little raised or like a little sleeping, cozy caterpillar if it's kind of scarred over.
Almost like a smiley face.
It does look like a smiley face and a little nose above it. What do you think those dots are? What do you think? You made the observation that a leaf was attached to it. So what do you think? Imagine the leaf is there. You have like the little petiole, you have the leaf. What's going on? What are those dots? Anyone want to make a guess or an observation? So think about a leaf. What's going on in a leaf? What's the leaf's job? And as a plant makes a leaf, why is it going to waste the time or take the time and energy to grow a leaf? Why would you grow a leaf? Anyone want to add to that? Cassandra, if you were a tree, why would you add a leaf to your existence?
Maybe to collect sunlight.
Yes, they're like little magic powerhouse solar panel.
Photosynthesis.
Yes, the magic word. So the plant, and what does the plant need? What is to have photosynthesis happen? What are what ingredients? Like if you were going to make a pot of soup and you were going to try to get photosynthesis to happen, even though we know it doesn't happen that way, but what ingredients are
Sunlight lets the plant produce chlorophyll, is it? I know it starts with a C.
Yep, so there's chlorophyll in the cell, right? The chloroplast. But they're doing they're part of the job of if the cell the leaf is a little factory. But what are they? You were right with sunlight. So sunlight needs to happen. What else? What other would you say ingredients need to be there?
Moisture, water.
Yep, water. Yep. There's one more if we were just being very general.
Oxygen.
Close. Not oxygen. What?
CO2.
Yes, carbon dioxide, right. So things need to get into that leaf for that factory to make sugars for itself and give us a present. And what is that? What is the plant? The plant does its photosynthesis, makes food, and gives us what? For really generalizing. You said it before.
Chlorophyll.
Oxygen, right? Oxygen is coming out, right? So how are we getting things into that leaf? How are they getting in there? The sunlight is getting in there, from the sunlight. The CO2 is going in through the stomata or through other different pores that get into plant. Oh, the water. How is the water getting in there? Does it just drop on the leaf and automatically get into the system? Well, the roots are part of it, but how is it getting into that leaf?
Sap.
Well, that's part of it. How is the sap? All right, so let's say there's sap or there's sugars that the plant makes, and it has to travel to the other parts of the trees. How does it travel? What does it travel through? Draw a leaf in your brain. Okay. What is a feature of the leaf that you might draw if you were drawing the leaf? Everyone draw a leaf, quick. Generic leaf.
Any leaf I can help with this amazing Canadian
leaf. Okay, has everyone drawn their generic leaf? Okay, we'll do, share what you have. We can all take turns. All right, go for it.
I drew a simple leaf.
Great, can I see? You're beautiful. Oh, that's a lovely leaf. All right, can I see the next person? Okay, way to go. And how about you, Rowan?
I tried to draw a maple leaf.
Great. And Cassandra?
My little leaf.
So everyone's leaf has a line or two or some lines. What are those lines? Yes.
Veins.
Veins. So let's say you're a leaf and you're attached to this scar. What do you think those little dots are?
Veins.
Where the veins attach to your twig. Okay. We call that bundle scar or vascular scar. It's showing the vascular bundles, vascular systems. It's showing the vein system, how both water and food sugars are moving through the tree, through the xylem and the phloem. They're in that vascular bundle. So we're seeing that. So when you look and see this scar, you can see how the veins were going from, because imagine the tree in your head. You have the tree, the roots, you have all these tissues running and veins going through your branch, right? So that's what you're observing. And each different leaves, because I saw Rowan draw a maple, have a different shape and a different vein pattern, and you see that represented on your twig. Okay, so these things. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, you actually have one. Okay, there you go. So you can observe, if you look now at the bottom of the petiole of that leaf, that oak leaf, you can almost try to reattach it. If you have number one of your stick is a red oak, and that's another good clue when we're identifying twigs in the winter. It's wintertime. Why are there some leaves on this twig? Does anyone know what that's called? There's a special name for it. The type of leaves that decide to hang on and give us a really good clue when we're identifying twigs. Does anyone know that word? There's a fun word. It begins with an M. It's marcescent. These are marcescent leaves. They are staying on. And oak tend to do that, and beech tend to do that. So if you're walking through the woods and you see marcescent leaves, it kind of steers you in a direction. Oh, it maybe can be a hornbeam. It maybe can be an oak. It maybe is a beech. So that will help you narrow, because you're trying to be a detective. You're looking at these twigs and saying, what are the clues here for me to help identify our winter twigs? Because we don't have, most of the time we don't have leaves, but we have the traces of leaves with these leaf scars that we just talked about. So when leaves grow on trees, we tend to say that they grow in a pattern. And we say that they can be opposite or alternate. And we see that in the scars on the twig. So if we look at our specimen list, we know that the sugar maple, the maple family, any type of maple. So let's grab samples 2, 3, and 4, which are in the maple family.
We have 4. Another 4.
And what do you observe? Does someone want to share an observation about either collectively 2, 3, and 4, or something they observe on one of the samples? Anyone want to share an observation?
It's bumpy.
It's bumpy.
Number 3 is what?
Yeah, number 3 can be a little bumpy. This plant, this tree can grow in wetter habitats, and this particular red maple was growing near a swamp. So it's adorned with some beautiful lichen, and was quite an old tree. And you can also see on the actual twigs, are you noticing if you run your finger up the twig, you can feel all of those bumps? And if you look really closely, do you see where they're on the twig, there are like little clumpy lines together, almost like it had like saggy skin, like there's little rings. Do you see that? Does everyone see that?
Yeah.
And if you look down the twig, you can kind of see those collective rings. So that marks where the branch has grown in a season. Those are the growing area, right? So you can see that growth ring. This season it grew this much, and the next. So you kind of look for those little growth rings. And you can see that if you look at the tip where the new bud is, you can see that kind of where it's pushing out through the twig and making that mark. So you can actually date, you can see how long this little twig has been growing by counting the little intersections there. But when you look at 2, 3, and 4, you also see that the leaf scars are opposite each other. So the maple is a tree whose leaves grow opposite. In our environment, in New Hampshire here, our opposite leaves are, there's a, you can say very mad horse, viburnum, ash, what is it? What's it? Very mad. So viburnum, maple, ash, dogwood, and horse chestnut. I don't like that it switches from Latin to to common in that collection of words, but anything in the maple family is going to be opposite. Their leaves are going to grow opposite each other, and you're going to observe that on the twig. So whether we look at number 4, which is a striped maple, or number 3, which is a red maple, or number 2, which is a sugar maple, which all look very, very different for being in the same family, we can observe on all 3 of those that those leaf scars are opposite each other, right? Off each other, they're not staggered. Now let's look at number 1, which was our red oak. And there, where you see the scars or the buds are alternate. They alternate from side to side up the twig. Another actually one that's more clear would be number 6, which is our beech. And that is going opposite. Number 9, the sweet birch of 5, you can observe that they are opposite each other, the way that those buds. Can everyone see that? So let's do a little exercise. Number 1, which is our red oak. Is it growing opposite or alternate? By looking at the buds and the scars.
Just go all over the place, so not opposite, but
alternate. Alternate, yep. So let's go with number 2. Number 2, our sugar maple. And here you can even see on my specimen that the branches, look, they're even very opposite each other, okay? So opposite. Number 3, opposite. 4, we talked about as opposite. So let's look at number 5, and then we'll pause and talk about a different feature here.
number 4. Okay, this is number 2. What number are we supposed to find? Number 3. Here's number 3.
You find your number 5?
Oh, yep.
So is this one opposite or alternate?
Alternate?
Alternate. And you can really observe the growth rings on this, the rings that show you where the seasonality of the growth. Now this is a sweet birch. Does anyone's sample have something hanging on it? It doesn't look like maybe a bud. It might have a different shape. Oh, what do you have? What did you find, Rowan, on yours?
Seed pods.
It's a type of seed. It's a container for a seed. What does anyone know what that is? What the word for that is?
I want to say cluster, but
I couldn't hear you, Rowan. I'm sorry. What did you say?
say cluster, but I know that's not right.
Well, it's a catkin. It's a catkin. So it has some catkins that can be male, some are female, so some are seeds, some can be flowers. And if you run into a twig with a catkin, it is most likely a birch or an alder. So that's kind of narrowing it down, just like we knew with the marcescent leaves. Oh, if we find a marcescent leaf hanging out on a twig, it may be, so that's helping us. So pairing that it has a catkin, it's growing in kind of a zigzaggy shape. Its buds are alternate. Those are giving us special clues. Can everyone scratch, either cut or scratch the bark of their twig? Get the little, expose the inner part, and then take a smell. So scratch, 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 a little piece off, and then smell. Does your stick have a fragrance? What does it smell like?
Minty.
Yeah, it's wintergreeny. So of the birch family, our yellow and our black and sweet birch all have that wintergreen smell. So that's another way to identify this twig. Do any of you have clippers with you? If you take specimen number 1 and cut the bottom, the best you can. What do you observe? Try to cut it quick so it's not pinching it and squeezing that inner pith, because that will change how the shape comes up.
Really?
Do you observe anything in the shape of that bottom? Is it a particular shape, would you say? So mine is very star-shaped. The shape of that pith, it makes the shape of a star. I don't know if you can see that. It can come in many shapes. I just did a quick little drawing. These are the general shapes. You can have a star shaped, a circle shaped, a triangular shape. So looking at the pith, the shape of that inner part of our twig can also give us a clue on how to ID. The oak family will always have a star shape. So when you're outside and you find an oak, what's another way to, especially an oak, determine one, that it's an oak, and then what things you would investigate on an oak to know if it's a red oak or a black oak or a white oak or a swamp oak or a scarlet oak. There's so many oaks. What do you think is a good way to tell?
What leaves are around it?
Yep, so that's true. Also, the leaves of oak are very, you can ID really well through leaves, but acorns, if you piled the acorn of all the different oaks, they all look very, very different. So there's dichotomous keys just to acorns to help you identify your oaks. So make sure you look. I know sometimes everyone thinks oak, like an acorn all looks the same, but they look very different between the different trees. And between the red and the white oak, their bud shape is very different. But a way to identify oak, so if you get your number one again, specimen number one, is their buds are always at the end, like a little crown. They kind of make a little crown. And if it's a red or black oak, they tend to be a more pointy crown. And if they are the white oak family, they're a little more round. So we're getting to almost 10 o'clock. So let's go through our samples and learn what the key features are for identifying, because it seems like everyone is making fantastic observations this morning and knowing what clues to look for. But at the end of this, want you to be able to go out into your woods or environment and be able to say, oh, this is this tree, or I'm going to look for these features. And I will follow up by sending you a winter twig dichotomous key that you can use. Does anyone know what a dichotomous key is? Anyone know? Do you know, Rowan, what a dichotomous key is?
It shows what it would look like and what you should look for.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a choose your own adventure book. Like first it asks you a question, and then it says, well, if you answered this question, if you made this observation, then turn to, and some of them will say like, turn to line so-and-so, or turn to page, like if you're using a guide, like a field guide, it will say, turn to this page. So basically we're on a choose your own adventure, and it will ask you, so the dichotomous key that I'm going to give you, let's see what the first question is. It is saying, is your tree one with a catkin? Oh, we know how to answer that. Did we find a catkin on that? Sometimes it will ask you, do you have opposite buds? Oh, Okay, go to this line. So it's going to, if you can make these observations, opposite or alternate, are there key features? Then the dichotomous key will lead us in a series of observations. We can make those observations and figure out what plant we have in front of us or what twig is in front of us. So number one, if we get copy sample one, we have a red oak. What do you think are the observations we want to make here to help identify? What are the things that we've talked about that make this twig an oak? So, what? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry, Rowan.
Red oaks have the normal oak shape, leaf shape, but they have more pointy edges.
Yep. So, were you saying that the red oak, when you have leaves, when the leaves are marcescent, the red oak is more pointy and the white oak is more rounded? Yep. And also their buds are similar to that. If you see a marcescent leaf, that automatically gives you a really great clue because you get to go fall back to leaves. But if you don't, you can, and you're not observing bark, you would look for alternate leaf scars and that crowning of,
Go with Daddy.
Of the bud. Okay, so if we're looking at number two, we have what? We have a sugar maple. Has anyone tapped trees this year? Has anyone?
I would be.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I would be, but because of COVID, my dad's friend isn't. My dad's friend's tapping, but he's not allowing anyone else to visit unless they're in his bubble. But
yeah, but you've done it before.
I have.
Great.
He tapped actually this year with second grade.
You did with your second grade? At your school tapped? And what school do you go to?
Nottingham.
Nottingham. That's great that they do that. That's great. So did you get to tap and then collect the syrup and then boil, or the whole process, or just?
We just did the whole entire process. We collected the sap, we tapped the tree, and we hang up. We put the spout in, and then put the spout driver in, and then we hang the bucket. And like the past week, we have in like 2 weeks, then we started to strain it.
That's great.
Then we started to boil it, and then we strained it again after boiling it fully, and then we took a spoonful of the syrup. Before that, we used a hydrometer, and we measured the thickness, and it was perfect. And then we strained it again and took a spoonful and tasted it, and it was good. So then the past week we had pancakes.
Oh, that's wonderful. I can just imagine. I think maybe I'll make my girls some pancakes after this too. So the sample number 2, can everyone observe that it is growing opposite? You're seeing the branches opposite, you're seeing the buds opposite as you look at the, and the buds on number 2 are so different than the buds on number 3, which is also a maple, but that is a red maple, and you can tap red maples. But you're seeing the more rounded orientation. It does look like it could be a crown at the top, but you know that it's not an oak because it is opposite. Everything on that branch as you go down is showing you that it is opposite. And an oak is not opposite. So that's another way you can always say, oh, well, I know it's not this, right? I know it can't be. It's opposite. Can't be a birch. Can't be an oak. It has to fall within these things. Number 4 is a striped maple. And you can really see where the growth ring is, where the, you see the leaf scar, you see the vascular bundle, the scar there. And you can also see that it has a very clear terminal bud. I see that at the tip. It's very clear which bud is at the tip. You have these lateral buds. And there's these scales, like enclosures, that keep the bud safe. Right? Because if all that new growth was exposed in the cold, cold winter, it wouldn't be able to grow. It would get burnt. So it's a covering. And that's another way that I identify, is to look at how many scales. So if you look at number 6, which is our beech, you can see it almost looks like a pine cone. Do you see on the buds? Very pine cone-like. There's all these kind of papery scales covering the bud. You see it growing. It's tapered at both sides. So a beech kind of has a little bit of this zigzagging. It has buds that taper at both ends. It's very pointy. If you poke your hand, it's significantly pokey. It's sharp. They also can have marcescent leaves, so that can be a clue sometimes. On number 5, what else do you notice on the bark? What do you observe? Is there anything going on just the smooth bark in between the branches or buds? Anyone observe anything?
That there is like whitish, yellowish bumps going all over it.
There's little bumps. What shape are those little bumps in, would you say?
Circles, and some are in ovals.
Yeah, they're like little dots. What do you think that is? What do you think's going on there?
It's growing.
Yeah, it's growing out of the spots, but just like the little, like say, I call them like freckles, like the little dots that dapple the space. What do you think that is? Can you look at it close up?
Number 6 and 5.
What else? Let me see if I can find another one that you'd be able to see them really well.
They're the same. No, they aren't.
So those are lenticels. It's like a raised pore in the woody plant. And there's a gas exchange there. So it gives like a little entrance, a little pore into the plant. What gases do you think we're talking about here? What gases concerns a tree? Does anyone have a guess or thought?
Wait, what gases?
Yeah, what gases would a tree be concerned with, do you think? 2 main gases.
Greenhouses?
Okay, so if we were going to make a greenhouse gas, like if we were going to say what particular gas would we be talking about, you think?
CO2?
Yeah. So it's the place where there's exchange between the atmosphere and the internal tissues of the plant, right? So these are like little pores in the branch that give a place for that. So that's what you're seeing. So you can use lenticels sometimes to ID. There are certain trees that have bigger lenticels, and you can notice here on number 6 that the leaf scar is so tiny compared to the leaf scar, let's say on number 10. I think some of you drew number 10, our furry branch. Does anyone know, is anyone familiar with this particular branch? Anyone know where you would find it? What plant do we grow on?
I do. It's 10.
All right, what is it? What do you have?
It's a sumac.
It is a sumac. Have any of you ever made sumac tea or sumac lemonade? Yeah, it's really tasty. It's tart. So the sumac. What do you know about a sumac's leaves? What do you know about its leaves?
Its leaves are really like blade shaped and long.
Yeah, and so they're blade shaped and long. What else do they look like? Draw a sumac leaf in your head, or you can draw it on a piece of paper if you want. What do you think? What is a sumac from your memory? This is tricky. You have to know plants to be able to do that. I would not normally ask someone who I have not met to say, quick, draw a sumac leaf. It's asking a lot. Yep, so that is part of the leaf, but sumacs are very tricky, kind of like an ash or a horse chestnut. That's a leaflet in the leaf. So when we talk about a sumac, the leaf is the whole big part that comes off, right? It is a compound leaf, right? So we talked that there are leaves that are alternate and leaves that are opposite. We might have even touched on that a maple leaf is palmate and a birch leaf is pinnate, right? We're talking about some of these things that we don't normally talk about when we're talking about winter and twigs, but it still makes a difference because we're being detectives here, right? We have to see what had happened. So when you look at the sumac, you're seeing where that rachis attached, that part of that compound leaf, that all those cool leaves that you drew, Rowan, those leaflets that are very blade shaped, come off of. But that whole piece, that whole compound collection of leaflets is the leaf. So when you look at that scar, you're seeing something much bigger than a tiny little petiole that would come off a maple leaf or a birch leaf. You're seeing something big. And that's why the ash, which has a compound leaf, or the horse chestnut, which has a compound leaf, or the sumac have these like really significant scars, because the piece that's coming off that has to be like a super vein because it's feeding all of those leaflets. And then the leaflets are coming off that rachis. That's not a traditional like stem or a vein is coming off. So you really see that mark. So sometimes if you see a very significant scar, you can say, oh, maybe that happens to be a compound leaf. Maybe that was just a bigger leaf, and that can lead you. The sumac is so fuzzy. So that's another thing you can always do. You can look at, especially with your loop, you can look at the texture of your stick. The sumac's buds are arranged alternately. And if you were to take one off and kind of scrape it off with your finger, its buds do not have scales. It doesn't have like number 6, that kind of pine coney scale that protects the beech twig. It has hairs that protect it. So sometimes hairs can take the place of a scale to protect that newly formed bud? Because what can a bud be? What do you think?
A
Bud on a tree. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
new tree or leaf.
Could be a new leaf. Could be turn into a new stem. Could turn into a flower. Right. So it needs to stay protected in the winter. Okay. So let's take a look at number 9. This is a great specimen for observing lenticels. You really see those dots, those raised pores on the twig. Can someone make an observation? You run into this twig, how would you describe it? There's some clues on here. What's going on? Anyone want to share an observation?
Alternate?
Yes, alternate. Anything else you want to observe? Are you would observe on this sheet?
I don't know.
So let's look at, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. The shape of its bud is very different than any of the shapes we've seen, huh? Look at the shape of that bud at the tip. It's kind of in a scalpel shape, isn't it? Does it look hairy to you? If you, it's a little fuzzy. It doesn't have any scales like our number 6 beech. It kind of has a cool zigzaggy formation, right? It's very zigzaggy in its way that it grows. But there's another clue on there. What's something on this twig that we haven't seen on the other twigs?
They're flowers.
Yeah, these are the leftover petals to the flower of the witch hazel. Does anyone know what a witch hazel flower looks like? It's kind of long and spidery. They're yellow. They smell really nice. So this is what's left over. These are the outer petals, but it still makes a bud-like shape. So that gives us a clue. So we have, as was noted, we have alternate buds. We have this scalpel-shaped end bud, terminal bud that doesn't have any scales. We see the remnants of the flower, kind of a gray zigzaggy shape. That would really help us when we're looking at a dichotomous key in identifying this twig. So now let's look at number 12. Everyone knows what this is.
In the middle so we all can see it.
So what are you seeing? What are you seeing?
Little white fuzzy buds.
So you're seeing little fuzzy white buds. Do you know what those are called?
No idea.
So these are also called catkins. And you can see on some of them that you can see those the coating, the scale, and how it was working to protect that cat-like fur before it flowers. Do you see that? And you can see the buds that are clinging so tight. They call that oppressed.
Yeah.
This bud is oppressed against the twig. Whereas you look at something like let's see, the
X.
number 5, and it is not oppressed, like against the leaf. So you can see, is it opposite or alternate?
Alternate.
And you can see that covering really well where the catkins have emerged. So that I wanted to highlight that and how close those buds are growing to our twig. All right, let's look at number 8.
I have number 8. I have one. I have an old one.
And number 8, what is, can someone share some observations on number 8? Number 8 is a really interesting twig.
It's very curved.
It is very curved. That's a good observation. What else can we observe?
It has buds at the end of the twig.
It does at the end. What else? Go down the twig. What else do you observe?
There are no other smaller twigs on the twig.
What do you think about its scarring? Is it a big scar? Little scar?
Big scar.
What do you think? I think it's on the bigger side. Right. And you can see the vascular bundles, right? The scar from where the veins were attached. It's really a big scar. So what type of leaf do you think it is? You think it's a simple or a compound leaf?
Simple. Compound.
So I'm going to say I think it's a compound leaf because it's a big scar, and I don't think it was a tiny little stem attached to that. I think it was a big rachis that might have held multiple leaves. Right? It's growing. Is it opposite or alternate? What can you tell by looking at the scars? Kind of all over.
Yeah. Alternate.
But they're alternate. Yeah. And you can see the growth area, right, from those rings. Those are pretty obvious. So its pith, if you get a good cross section, should be star-shaped. And the leaf scars should be just a little bit raised. If you have your loop, the bud is a little bit hairy, and it has a very distinct covering. Almost looks like it's a flower. It's quite a big terminal bud. So this is from a shagbark hickory. Does anyone know what that tree looks like? Do you have that in your environment?
I don't. I think I might have seen one or two, a few around here, but just not like I can't see one right out our window though.
Sure. So they almost look like they're shedding, like something out of a Dr. Seuss book, right? It's little plates of bark are kind of twisting and turning off. They have a nut, and their leaves are compound, alternate, and pinnate. So let's quickly talk about pinnate and palmate leaves really quickly. Okay. So does anyone know what a palmate leaf is? Has anyone ever heard that term before? You drew one earlier, Rowan. What leaf did you draw earlier?
Maple leaf?
You drew a maple leaf. So imagine a maple leaf. And if you were to draw its veins and look at your hand, right, your palm, it has its points and the veins go through to one point and out, right? So that's a palmate leaf. A maple leaf is palmate. A pinnate leaf looks like a feather. So when you drew that sumac leaf, or if you draw a beech leaf, it kind of has the vein and the the other pieces off, so it looks like a feather. So when we say that the sumac is pinnately compound, it's saying that they are pinnate leaves and it is compound. Okay, so that helps identifying, using a dichotomous key. If you were doing it in the summer and leaves were there, that language would kind of shift a little bit to knowing, oh, is it pinnate or palmate, or is it whorled? And you'll see that with some twigs, is that you'll have the twig and the leaf scars will be all around it. You're like, what's going on? And it's because it has a whorling. So all the leaves that were attached, let me draw that for you, were coming off like all around it. So it'd be a very different leaf scar. I think the only one we haven't really looked at is number 11. So let's take a look at number 11. What do you observe with number 11? 11 is different.
It has many stems coming off it.
It does. It has many stems coming off it. What else do you observe?
Like the other one, it has only buds at the end of the stems.
Yeah, the buds that are growing along the sides are really, really tiny, and mine very, very, very tiny. They might not have come out yet, but there are much bigger buds at the end, much, much, much bigger. Because those buds are flower buds. If you take this and put it into the water, bang up the bottom a little bit, maybe you can get it to leaf out and flower. That's why I wanted to give this one to you, because you could probably see the leaves open. Same with number 3. If you took number 3 and really put it in water and kind of got a hammer and bang the bottom, you could probably watch that particular twig turn into flowers and leaves and observe the differences. But this is for a lilac, and it has 3 sets of scales that protect that bud. You can really see the scales doing its job and it emerging out. And you can see the difference between a flower bud and a leaf bud, which you don't always have the chance to do that. So I would suggest 11 and 3, give it a little fresh cut, bang it with a hammer and put it in a little vessel of water, and you'll be able to observe the differences. Anyone have any questions? We can wrap up. This was such a nice morning of talking about twigs. I wish we were outside and looking for twigs, and I bet it would even be a good salamander. This was a hunting morning too, with the weather we had last night. Does anyone have any questions before we leave Zoomland? You were really great. I really enjoyed hearing your observations. It's such a nice way to start the day. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and Roanne for sharing your knowledge with us. If you have any more questions, feel free, you or your mom, to reach out to us with email, and we can help you out with your twigs and sticks if you find something.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Yeah.
Have a great morning.